Hello and welcome to another bonus level of the Thoughts and Players podcast, the brand new gaming podcast with bold takes and no strings attached. You may be able to hear crickets in the background. I am recording this pretty late on a Saturday night, but it's okay. It adds to the ambiance. So, in this level, I am riding solo. It is just I, Jeremy. Okay? Good thing, bad thing, I'm not sure. But hopefully, you'll stick around. Okay? So, I've discussed with Corey and David in the past about doing a series of bonus levels called Representation in Gaming. And I'm sure a lot of you nowadays, we all hear about representation, about inclusion, about diversity, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's academically, whether it's culturally. If you read a lot of gaming sites or follow gaming studios and developers, they constantly talk about representation and inclusion. I believe they approach the topic and the idea with a bit of a reductive attitude, though. Because when they talk about representation, they are mostly talking about ethnic or racial representation. I understand that that is important. But what I believe to be equally important is the representation and inclusion of differing ideas, opinions, and perspectives. Over the past several years, at least for myself, I've seen the sensibilities of the gaming industry lean in a certain social-political direction. Now, whether you believe that direction to be the right direction is not of any interest to me, really, or the conversation I want to have. What I'm most interested in and most concerned about is that the tendency of those who wish to further amplify the voices of those who align with their isms threaten to squash differing opinions and perspectives for the sake of comfort. Therefore, if a game was to take on a certain topic, there is a higher probability that no matter the developer, they would approach some subjects with the same homogeneous sensibilities. So I wanted to highlight games that represent or present arguments from varying or differing perspectives. Some games may deal with race and culture. For instance, I plan on doing one about Assassin's Creed Origins and how the introduction of an Egyptian, a man of color in the series, brings a different, interesting story arc to gaming that we may not get, right? Or even something like Ghost of Tsushima, right? If we don't have people willing to take and look at perspectives from a different culture and incorporate them, we don't get to experience those type of stories, right? There's nothing innately Western about samurai, but because people chose to pursue that, we get to experience something that's not the usual for us. And because it's not typical, it's able to strike us in a different way, and we're able to tap into it in, I think, a more meaningful way. Certain things like that. So some games may deal with race and culture, some may deal with more social political subjects, and some may deal with bigger subjects, such as today's topic. Not anything heavy, but kind of a more abstract idea of things. So again, I plan on doing several of these. They may or may not be sequential, so I may do this and then not do another for 12 levels or so. But I just wanted to kind of get that disclaimer out of the way. So with it out of the way, let's get started. Now, I'll admit I had a hard time figuring out what the first game I wanted to do in the series. I had a few games in mind, but I eventually ended up going with Grand Theft Auto 5, developed and published by Rockstar originally in 2013. This game is 7 years old, almost 10 years old, and it is as relevant as ever in the gaming zeitgeist, kind of like a Skyrim, oddly enough, except a much, much, much better made game. Initially, I wanted to discuss how GTA 5 represents differing social economic classes, right? Think about working class, impoverished, middle class, upper middle class, different things like that. And it does that to some extent, but it does not examine them as intently as I had remembered. I haven't played the game in probably about 4 or 5 years. So in fact, there actually becomes a point in GTA 5 where it shows how there are many more similarities with people in these individuals across these social economic classes. But one thing that I began to take interest in while experiencing the game again, and what I think is actually another one of its central themes, is its take on wealth and morality. Now, here's your spoiler alert if you haven't played this nearly 10-year-old game, okay? If you haven't and you're down for profanity and violence and vulgarity and psychopaths, if that's your thing, I recommend you check it out. But that's your warning. So let's get started. So in the beginning of this game, you meet Michael Townley, who we later will refer to as Michael DeSanta, who is in the process of doing a bank robbery. He is a bank robber. That is his profession. This is the kind of prologue that happens in the game. And long story short, things go wrong, and Michael is forced to fake his death and go into the witness protection program with his family. Okay? We then stumble upon him 10 years later, and he's lamenting to his therapist about his misery as an upper middle class retired criminal, literally. During this session, the therapist mentions Michael's son, Jimmy, and how he's a good kid, right? But Michael becomes even more enraged by him saying this and claims that his son is useless and all he does is jerk off and play video games all day. All right. That is fatherly love on full display. Now, what's interesting here is, again, though Jimmy may not be doing anything productive, he's not necessarily doing anything harmful or negative, at least not to others, right? Going off of this, the therapist then asks Michael, well, what about you? Because you're a retired criminal that had to fake his death, right? And took all the money that you got from said bank robbery and used it to finance your lifestyle. Michael thinks briefly when asked, what about you? Before he says, I didn't have the same advantages he has growing up. Now, this scene sets the first nugget about GTA 5's approach to wealth and morality. A lack of wealth leads to a lack of opportunities. And if one lacks opportunity, one cannot be fully blamed or admonished for compromising their morality in order to attain those opportunities. This is the central thesis, or one of the central themes that's explored in this game. And as we go on, I'll talk about how it's further reemphasized, brought back into focus, and further expanded upon. So immediately after leaving his therapist's office, Michael is sitting on the bench, contemplating life, and he's approached by two black gentlemen. And one of these gentlemen is our second protagonist. This is where we get introduced to Franklin Clinton. He and Lamar, his frenemy of sorts, they bicker about a job they're about to do, which is essentially a theft. And Lamar mentions that, hey, look, I know this thing is kind of shifty or shady, but, I'm fine making hood money, This is briefly alluding to kind of a sub-thought of wealth within the hip-hop community predominantly, of being rich and being hood rich. That's not really explored too much, but it's interesting they give that little nugget there. They are tasked with repossessing 2 sports cars from someone who is, quote, living good off of bad credit, essentially living beyond their means. And they are to return the car to a car dealer they work for named Simeon. Now, what is Simeon's deal? Well, Simeon essentially sells people with bad credit or poor financial literacy nice looking cars at ridiculous financing rates. So $700, $800, $900, $1,000 a month payments for vehicles very not much worth the price tag. Within seconds of leaving Michael's story, we're introduced to 3 characters that reiterate this idea of compromising morality to attain wealth and opportunity. Those 3 characters being Franklin, Lamar, and Simeon. Now, it would be easy to write off these men as just not very good people, and they aren't. That is a fact. But the writers at Rockstar made the effort to immediately humanize our protagonist in some way by showing their current life or situation and what motivators are pushing them towards said deplorable behavior. This is a very common narrative tool used in films, and it works effectively here. So immediately after this mission, where you take the sports car to Simeon, Franklin returns home. Here we see that Franklin lives with his mother in the hood, essentially, and she is currently going through a midlife crisis of sorts. In this scene of Franklin coming home, his mother refers to him as a freeloader. So we see here that Franklin lives in an environment that, from a societal perspective, has little value, and a house with someone that tells him he has little value. Can you blame him for trying to find value elsewhere, even if it's at the cost of his morality? In a later mission, Franklin has been tasked to repossess a vehicle that Michael's son Jimmy bought from Simeon, the good kid. As you sneak through the house as Franklin to repossess his car, you get a glimpse into what Michael's family's life is like. His son plays video games. His daughter aspires to be a famous actor. And his wife has physical longings for another man. This first instance being a tennis instructor that works with her. But what we see here is that everyone is desperately seeking value and validation from external sources. And they are willing to compromise what morality they have to attain that value. For Jimmy, it's simply looking like an ass to appear cool or interesting. But for Tracy, Michael's daughter, it's her sense of self-worth and the value of her body. She is willing to very much present herself as promiscuous in order to gain favor with producers, whether they be Hollywood producers or the other kind of industry out there. And Amanda, of course, Michael's wife, it's, monogamy, and essentially her marital duty to be faithful that she is willing to throw to the wayside. So we have these characters, both major and minor, that speak to this theme of wealth and morality. And yes, we still have everyone's favorite character, Trevor, to discuss and incorporate into the conversation. But this theme isn't something that is just conveyed through the dialogue of our characters. In fact, Rockstar made the concerted effort to create a mechanic in the game that adds commentary to this as well. Now, one cannot begin to interact with this mechanic until they meet the character in this game that epitomizes the theme of morality and wealth more than anyone. That character being not Trevor, but Lester Crest. So through certain circumstances and very poor anger management, Michael finds himself in need of a lot of money to pay back a dangerous drug lord. And for Michael, the only way he knows how to make money, good money, is to rob banks. So he hunts down his old pal Lester Crest, who kind of serves as the tech brain behind the scenes, and to help with setting up some jobs. Now remember, Michael is supposed to be dead. So in order to gain Lester's favor again, he must do him, a favor. What is this favor? Michael is tasked with compromising the keynote speech of one Jay Norris, founder and CEO of Life Invader. This individual has gained his riches by selling people's data and information, hiring young, naive employees to pay them non-competitive wages. This is a trick, by the way. You hire young people to pay them non-competitive wages so you can drive the wages that are basically relative to the market down. That's like a tactic that all these companies do. But he's doing that and much more. All the while presenting himself as an individual concerned about the well-being of his fellow humans. Now, GTA historically as a series is known for satirizing real-world issues and individuals. And in this case, Jay Norris serves as the proxy for Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, Tim Cook, Jack Dorsey, etc., etc. Now, Lester resents Jay Norris, specifically mentioning how he's outsourced thousands of jobs overseas and sells personnel data to the highest bidder with no thought or qualms about it. Sounds very familiar. Moving forward a bit in the story, Michael is able to penetrate Life Invader and rigs the prototype product Jay will be using in his special keynote. After a job well done, Michael returns home, watches the keynote, dials the device as he's instructed to by Lester. Jay Norris answers and gets his head blown off on live television. Okay. Besides all the violence that occurs, which is interesting, there is something Jay Norris says that once again touches briefly on this theme we've been talking about. Okay. During his keynote speech, Jay talks very proudly about how he's built his company to what it is now. You know, blood, sweat, tears, grit. And that he started this little company in its parents' pool house in East Caraway. Item number 1, pool house. I don't know about you, but I've not seen a lot of pool houses in the hood. I've not seen a lot of pool houses in rural areas. I've actually seen very few pool houses, if at any all, in regular middle-class suburbia, right? Pool house. He then mentions East Caraway, which is located in an area most commonly referred to in the GTA universe as the Caraways. Now, in GTA, the Caraways serve as a proxy for the Hamptons. Wealth equals opportunity. And in order to attain opportunity, one must be willing to bend their morality. Now, remember the game mechanic I was talking about. Well, once you've completed this mission, you gain the ability to invest and trade on the stock market. In fact, to expand on this, you are able to take jobs from Lester Crest to sabotage companies whose CEOs have wronged people and then invest in those companies once the stocks bottom out for some unfortunate event you set in motion. This game mechanic is one of the primary ways of which you are to acquire money throughout the entirety of the game. Thus, your very means of success requires you to constantly act in morally deplorable ways in order to build wealth and access to opportunity. And with every victim lined up for you to take down, Lester gives you their background, how they've stolen the livelihood and means of your fellow citizens, and that these gluttons simply have it coming. And it makes sense, right? I mean, how could they blame you? Whether you are Michael, Franklin, or Trevor, you are someone that has been made to feel of little value. Forgotten by your family, forgotten in the hood, forgotten in some rural area, some meth hick town. These men of means have had the luxury of advantages you didn't grow up with. Though this theme and the way GTA 5 examines wealth and morality permeates the entire game, never does the game seem to say that this mindset is correct. For every dollar you gain, you lose a piece of yourself. The risks become higher, and though the rewards may increase, they do not do so in kind. Throughout their journey, our protagonists push away their loved ones, their friends, and ultimately the life the way they knew it. So in the end, was it really worth it? That brings us to the end of this bonus level. I plan on doing longer ones, but wanted to start us off on a brief, lighter episode to see if you guys would be interested in anything like this. Please let us know by dropping a comment on our Facebook page, facebook.com/thoughts-and-players, all one word, or on our Instagram @thoughts.players, or even on our YouTube channel. We have one of those. All our episodes are posted there as well. Also, please be sure to get involved in our August Gamer giveaway. Okay, this comes out Monday morning, which means you have until midnight Eastern Standard Time to enter and increase your chances. The rules are on our social media pages, so be sure to like, share, and tag people to increase your chances of winning a $10 Xbox gift card code, however they do it now. There will be 2 more weeks after this, so opportunities are running out. Anyway, that does it for me. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Again, give us your feedback. Let us know what you think. We really appreciate it. And I will catch you on the next level.